Another interesting mograph is MoSpline. MoSpline is a spline that you can control it. It's parametric. You can assign the forces. You can assign a deformer. It's like a mograph. We begin from a new scene, and I want to explain that MoSpline. If you select a MoSpline, as you can see, it's just a simple spline that it has a base coordinate object, simple effector, and a force. Here you can drag and drop force and effector. In objects, we have the most important thing here is a mode. You can define a simple. It is a simple spline that you can use only the parameter in a simple. But if you change it to the spline, as you can see that this tab changed to a spline, and you can define a source spline to use it, or turtle. It means you can programming that. As you can see, if you go to the values turtle, as you can see, I explained. Go to the object and beginning from the simple. The simple begin with here. If you go to the simple tab, here you can change the size of that, length of that. First, you have to go to change the segment. As you can see, the segment is how much this object you want to copy. For seeing that, you have to go in here and change them in each angle that you want. In this angle, or in this angle. Okay, I like it this angle. As you can see, you can 360, and here is segment. Now you can see the segment, and you can define them and change if you want it. So you can change any angle that you want. As you can see, interesting. And the interesting part of these are this option. If you click on them, you can control the length by curve. Interesting. Or you can insert a formula here. I give you that formula and description. You can insert them and control, for example, length by formula, or for example, control the length. It does not mean here, but I explain them here. A step, it means if you can here and the curve your, as you can see, you can curve your MoSpline. This is a MoSpline. What does it mean? This is a spline. You can give it to the sweep and control it. For example, you can come here and sweep it. For example, in a circle, I want to sweep this circle along this MoSpline. And now, if you turn off the sweep, if you render, as you can see, we have nothing because it's just a spline. Going to the, as you can see, if you turn off the sweep, this is a very huge circle, but the length and the diameter of the circle is controlling by width here. Here you can change the width, okay? This is on width. And you can control the width with, with this spline there. For example, reset it. As you can see, you can control the length of that by any, for example, sign. Interesting. Or you can assign any formula here that you want. So if you open it, as you can see, you can control the length by that, and you can reset it. Or you can go and flip it. Interesting. So here you can control it. You can curve it, you can bend it. As you can see, you can control any. This is very interesting. You can create interesting idea with this. Twist it if you want it. And you can control the twist by formula, by any formula here that you want. Okay. Interesting. Okay, this is the first. That is the object. Another interesting thing, we're going to the grow mode. Here, the end mode. As you can see, you can control N. As you can see, because the mode is a complete spline, it's actually define this spline as a one, and one by one it will be change its end. Or for offset, I explain the offset now because it's depend on extend, start and end. We can go to here and make them 0, 0, 0. Yep. You can make it angles nice. And just a little bending. Nice. But if you change the grow mode to a separate segment, if you change N, as you can see, the whole object will be growing. Nice. Okay. And you can offset it. As you can see, it will be continue its way. It's offset from. And as you can see, if it reaches the end, the software guess and calculate this according to this bending you define here and continue its way, because we extend the end. If you change the extend and none, it will be delete and disappear because it does not allow you to extend the end. And if you extend, we have something like this. If you open this, we can access a lot of interesting other settings that you can control that extension at the end of scaling, spiral of that. Interesting. You can animate them, spiral scale. You can change it smooth or not. Interesting. Or if you offset in a negative value, as you can see, here you can, of course, change that parameter at the offset of end. Let's start. Interesting. You open it, you can access a lot of example. If you turn off the sweep, this is how to the display mode. For this destination spline, Relix, and Rival, I have to give an example, don't worry. In display mode, you have to change it to line. You can see better, or dual line. In a dual line, it is a source, and as you can see, it's a rail of it. It's control the width of that. If you go to the spline, change the width, as you can see, the offset, this is an offset rail spline of the main spline, and this is distance define the width. Okay, this is a display mode. You can, or you can using full shape. I define the line. Another usage of the MoSpline is if you go to the MoSpline and change it to the spline. It means if you change it to the spline mode, instead of the simple, we have an spline mode here. It's waiting for you to specify it as spline source. For example, I draw a sketch, a simple sketch, and this is a spline. Go to the MoSpline and click and drag and drop it in a source. And this spline defined as a MoSpline. If you go to the MoSpline in an object, you can, for example, turn it full shape. Now you can see it's a MoSpline. Interesting. And that's it. In a MoSpline, you can go in an object, no. In a spline tab, you can change the width of that. I turn off the spline, don't see that. Okay, and you can go to the sweep. I explained it before in a detail. You can change in the scale like this. And if you, one of the benefit of the MoSpline is for growthing. If you go into the object and change the end no end scale, no end growth. As you can see, it grows like a cut object, and it's not beautiful. But if you go to the MoSpline in the object and the end growth here, as you can see, it's exactly like growing on a line, and it is more natural and interesting. Okay, this is one of the benefits of the spline. So in a spline mode, we have a spline object that you can define the spline source. And for example, if you give a, for example, four-side object instead of the circle, as you can see, we have an object here. Go to the sweep, and I don't want this in the scale to see the rail. We can click and drag and duplicate it and change it to the rail. I'm going to the MoSpline and define a rail. And we have the MoSpline and it's 9. Okay, and you can go here and change the rail. And as you can see, with changing the rail, if you turn off the, as you can see, we have a small rail here that you can define your rail. And if you turn it on, as you can see, we have it. With a rail, you can define the rotation and the scale of that. Interesting. As you can see, if you change a rail curve here, rail curve, depending on the source. Okay. Some spline in a spline object. And here also you can change the widths. And here you can define the widths by curve, give it formula, any formula, sine, flan. Okay. Here in a source, if you open it, you can access the parameter of that spline. If you select it, it's exactly that parameter. Okay, you can access to your parameter here. Okay. Now we are going to the MoSpline. Another thing that you can imagine in a generation mode, the vertex count even in a step. We give you another example with that. You can assign the MoSpline to any deformer, any spline. For example, a text. You can define this text by a MoSpline. Go to the MoSpline, graph and select the MoSpline. And in a MoSpline, you go into the spline and define a spline as a source. This is our text. And this text creates a MoSpline. It turned to the MoSpline. And all of these are, if you close it, please, to better understanding. Here you can change the count of that segments that you created with even, step, or vertexes. You can go to the object and change the n. As you can see, any segment. Nice. Imagine you can create interesting effect with this. The spline, we have a count. If you go to the vertex, it's defined the vertex of that cube, that's spline. And as you can see, this is an one segment, because it's end, start and end of it's. As you can see, this text create by multi-MoSpline because of the vertex. It create a vertex, for example, it's a 1, it's a 2, as you can see. You can change the widths. But if you count, here you can change how many counts of that MoSpline do you want to on this object. Or even, it means evenly distribute, or in a step. You can change the step distance between one to another MoSpline. Okay. For this generation, I have to give you example. We have lots of interesting example and idea about this that you have to see in a project to better understand it. Okay, let's give you another example about MoSpline with this. For example, you want to control this interesting grass uh, with a wind and another effector of the MoSpline. So this is an object, and our MoSpline is here, and our MoSpline is a spline. So we need a deformer that control the object with a spline. Okay, the deformer that controls spline object by a spline is spline wrap. Go to the MoSpline and in the object, in a simple change the angle of that in this direction. Okay, in this direction, and change the length to fit that our object that we want to control it. We want to connect this object to this MoSpline, and if we connect it to this MoSpline, we can control the MoSpline, give it the wind, give it the deformer, and the object will be moved according to that MoSpline. The bridge that connects this object to this MoSpline is the spline wrap that I explained before in deformer. Go and child on an object and then fit the object. As I said before, the direction of the spline wrap is important. It's try to give it the direction of the object. So positive y. Now it's correct. Then the spline wrap tell you, okay, I control this object with which spline? With MoSpline. Now you can control it. Interesting. And it is done. If you go to the MoSpline, you can change the length of that. You can change the angle of that. You can change the curve of that. Interesting. You can change the bend of that. You can change the twist and anything with MoSpline. And this is a MoSpline. In the render, you can just render your objects. And here I want to explain the forces. You can assign any forces in the simulation, in the forces here, to your object. I explain them later, but it is a wind. You can give a wind to your objects. But it is important that you have to go to the MoSpline and click and drag the wind here. I don't know why it's in exclude. It means it isn't include. It means the wind include the MoSpline. And if you play it, nothing happened because we have to go to the wind and in the object change its parameter. For example, we need the turbulence and the turbulence frequency. And here you can control your object with this wind. Nice. So this is another benefit of the MoSpline for controlling the object. I hope you're learning. It's very interesting. Another benefit of the MoSpline is in a cloner. For example, we can give a plane. It's not important. And I want to create a MoSpline and give a cloner. Oh, sorry. I want to clone the MoSpline. Interesting. Clone MoSpline in a cloner, an object. I explained them before. Which object? This plane. And as you can see, it automatically given a surface. It's nice. And I want to clone another mograph. Click and drag it, holding Ctrl to copy it. This is clone number 1. This is clone number 2. And in the mograph number 2, MoSpline, sorry. In the MoSpline number 1, our length is this number. And in the other, we are going to the little small number that are inside of the object. So a small length. And as I said before, we want to blending from high number to the lower number. So with this mode, we need to instead of iterate to blend. As you can see, we are mixing the high and the low of this, for example, MoSpline. And then I want to control it by effector. It's very simple. You can go into the clone and effector, for example, the plane effector. In a plane effector, I don't want to change its position, but I want to change the modify of the clone. It means I explained it before. The modify happen in between the object of the cloner. I open this door to control that modify by our fields, our effectors. This effector that control that modification. Which modification? From almost 0 length to a high number. So this is on plane. If you, by default, it has no field. I explained the field before. You can refer to previous lesson. We give linear. And in this linear, as you can see, we can control the growth of splines on objects. Interesting. Or you can give your effector directly to our MoSpline that I have to explain in example to better understanding. Okay, this is one benefit of object. Okay, and now another example here. For example, this MoSpline is turtle. It means it's not good here, but another example that here, if you insert another MoSpline here, that we are going to explain the turtle. The turtle is a programming of that. It's very interesting but easy. You can control your MoSpline, but this formula here and the values that you can define here. Okay, that I want to explain this part because it has a interesting that I will explain all of them in next lesson.
Hello my friends, to continue these tutorials on YouTube, subscribe us, like us, and hit the bell icon. And now you will be alerted about all of the amazing videos that we release.